Hey guys, Solomon here. I hope you're having a great day. Today's video, we're going to be looking at some Hippo Defense theory, particularly what to do if white just goes crazy on the e-file, pushing down their king pawn like there's no tomorrow. Why is this a mistake, and how can black take advantage of it, getting, honestly, an advantage at move 3? Let's take a look. So, okay, we got the starting position here. I heard that a lot of you guys run into this based on your comments on this channel. But okay, let's say white here plays a move like e4 and we fianchetto our dark squared bishop right away. Okay, there's a couple of moves here. White advancing like crazy. In today's video, we're looking at e5. Now, if you want to see a video on d5 as well, let me know down in the comment section below. But today we're going to be looking at this move of e5. How do we take advantage of this? I'm going to recommend the move of d6. This is Stockfish 101 here. Okay, if you plug this into Stockfish, it's going to recommend d6 and tell you that black has the edge here, no matter what white plays. Okay, no matter what white plays here, black has an advantage. Okay, and that's saying something, right? I mean, move 3, right? This might seem scary, but just remember, literally the moment that white plays this, black's better. Now, is black winning? No. Is the game over? No, right? But we do have an edge, and we'll take it. So we're playing this move of d6. Notice now that we have two pieces attacking that pawn on e5. White only has one defender. So white here really has a decision to make, right? Do they want to defend it with a move, for example, like knight f3 or f4, which is two moves we're going to look over? And also, what happens if white just goes, you know what, I'm just going to take that guy off, right? What if white just takes? Okay, well, let's first take a look at the move of knight f3. White just, naturally developing, as it seems. Well, notice, because white is the one with the advanced pawn, we can capture with our d-pawn, and when they capture back, we get to initiate the queen trade. More on that in a moment. By the way, if white does take with the knight first, right? I mean, let's just say white takes, knight takes e5. In this kind of instance, there's a lot of different moves that we can play. I personally would probably just side with taking off that knight and then continuing with the normal game plan. Okay, but again, we go back to knight f3. If we take this and they decide to capture back with the pawn, let's trade queens. Why does this matter? It matters because all of a sudden, white's king cannot castle and our king can. And oftentimes, we're going to castle queenside with check against that king that, again, cannot castle. Now, some may say that we're in the end game here. I don't think we're quite in the end game, although we're pretty close. There's still a lot of pieces left on the board. We got 4 minor pieces on each side and 2 rooks. So I would call this kind of a late middle game. Okay, it definitely feels kind of like an end game because there's, the queens are off the board, but there's still a lot of play to be done here. And I would say, this pawn here, I'm not scared of it. I'm not scared of it at all. In fact, it just kind of gives us great squares. And this pawn kind of just attacks squares that we already own pretty well. We got 2 pawns on this guy. We got a pawn and 2 minor pieces on that f6 square. I don't know where this pawn's going. I guess you can go here, but thanks. It's nice of you to do that. Here, black can play a move like knight c6 and just start ganging up on that pawn, right? We got 2 attackers. White only has 1 defender, right? If we see something like bishop f4, let's pin that knight to the king, right? The computer move here for white is to pin our knight. And in that case, okay, let's unpin it, right? And again, let's reinitiate the threat of winning this guy right off. Okay, if you see a move like rook e1, we are going to castle queenside, and our rook is directly going to be aimed at the opponent's king, which is something that we're not going to complain about. If we see a move here like bishop takes, we take back. Now we're threatening yet again a pawn, right? This pawn here is like white's full-time job. They're working 80 hours a week trying to figure out how on earth to save this pawn on e5. We're threatening to take off the defender and then capture off. Let's say white here plays a move like rook e1 defending it. Okay, we castle with check. That's just great tempo. That's great chess, right? You're castling, you're getting 2 pieces developed at once, and you're checking the king. Here, if white blocks here, again, when this pawn pushes, white weakens squares. One of those is f5, right? So let's play a move like knight h6, right? If h3, stopping our idea of knight g4, jumping in and just attacking a bunch of stuff. Okay, let's take that knight, right? Again, this knight is pinned. Okay, so white has to play a move like g takes. We play knight f5. Talk about a solid knight that cannot be touched. There is no pawn for the rest of this game, right, in their current files that is going to be able to kick this knight off, right? Very active, doing quite a bit, right? This knight can't do anything at all. It's literally pinned. It's literally pinned. And if you play a move here like king e2, unpinning it, knight d4 check happens. We're checking the king. We're looking at c2. If you defend c2, right? We can play bishop h6, adding more pressure. We could even just take this pawn right away. We're up a pawn. Thank you, right? So our knight's obviously way better, right? Between these two rooks, which one is better? I mean, you know, white's rook's okay, right? It's not the worst rook I've seen, but honestly, it is kind of just babysitting a pawn. Our rook is pinning a knight to the king, and it's on a completely open file instead of a closed file, which kind of feels open because that pawn's so far pushed. What about the bishops? Our bishop is way better. Again, this knight can't move, and because the knight can't move, the bishop can't move, and because this bishop can't move, this rook on a1 cannot move. This bishop is attacking a pawn. It can come to h6 at any point, attack that pin knight. Our knight can get busy as well. We can even double up here, maybe threaten a pawn, maybe double up our rooks against that knight. I mean, this is just a great position for black to work with. Okay, so when you play d6, if white plays a move like knight f3 here, just trying to hang on to that pawn, we're not too worried about it. f4 as well. I think this is a great game for black. This you might want to memorize, but you can take this pawn here. Again, if you take with the d pawn, we initiate the trade, which makes your king unable to castle, and my king can castle, oftentimes with check against your king. Not to mention that we're up in development because you just keep using all your time pushing these pawns, which are honestly just turning into big old targets, which we, you know, would love to go after. But okay, if you know f takes, in that case, let's keep trying to break this file open at all cost, right? Let's play c5. If c3, we can keep adding pressure, right? If you take on c5, we trade. We're down a pawn, but right away we even things up with bishop takes. And now you got a situation where white here has doubled pawns, but they're not close together, right? I don't think double pawns are always bad. For example, if this pawn was on c3, I actually think this is kind of a pretty solid cluster of pawns for white, right? They're not really weak, but in this case, the pawns are pretty spread out. So I'm going to say that this pawn here is more of a target than anything. You know, if you attack our bishop, we can drop right back, and we have easy development here, right? We have moves like knight f6, knight c6, castling kingside. Again, you can't castle. And, you know, from that point, we can develop our bishop, get a rook to d8, and put pressure down that d file. Yeah, it's going to be, you know, white has some issues here at the end of the day. White has some issues. You can't even develop this bishop right now because our bishop is so freaking strong and it's attacking b2. If you play knight c3, at some point, if we want to, we can take here and give white triple isolated pawns with an isolated pawn on a2. And, you know, the computer doesn't like bishop takes c3, but I'm not going to lie, I do. Okay, I mean, this is... If I'm playing this position as white, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. Let's go back to our original d6 position, but from the black perspective. Finally, right, we looked at these moves of here or f4. In either case, we're taking, right? And if the pawn pushes, we take, and then we play c5, continuing to add pressure on white's overextended pawns. You got to be careful in pushing pawns too much. If your pieces aren't developed, if they're not ready, if they're not fit for the job to support an attack, which, by the way, they're not, if they're not developed, pushing pawns just makes your king a big old target, okay? And that's kind of what white's doing here. Let's say white here captures on d6. Well, in this case, we have some options. One of them is c takes. I think c takes is totally fine. I mean, c takes, you know, some of you guys might be thinking, wait, we're not in the hippo anymore, right? And that's okay, right? You know, I could have said that earlier. There's sometimes in the hippopotamus setup where, okay, we deviate from the hippo, but oftentimes it's because white just gives us a great game. In this case, we have two central pawns. White only has one. And by central pawns, I mean pawns on the D and the E files. We have two, white has one. That's a great advantage for us, right? We have a very solid pawn chain. A nice fianchetto bishop. We can play knight f6. We can castle kingside, continue developing our pieces. Maybe something like a6 as well, just, you know, getting that hyper modern type of setup. We can develop this knight as well. Great game for black, okay? Dead even, actually, which, okay, I mean, move 4, if we got a dead even evaluation according to Stockfish, or even worse, if white plays wrong, I'll take it. However, after e takes, the best move here, right? I mean, okay, e takes also works, but honestly, I think c takes is way better, practically speaking. But better than either of those, queen takes. Queen takes d6. How many pieces does white have developed? We're not talking pawns, we're talking pieces. White has literally moved 0 pieces in 4 moves. They played pawn, 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 takes. White was eager to take this pawn, and I don't know why, because we just got more development. We now have 2 pieces attacking that d4 pawn, and if you defend it, let's keep adding pressure, right? If you pin the knight, that's okay. Let's attack your bishop, okay? If you take, we'll take back with the queen. If you castle, we pin the knight. Notice just how quickly in so many of these kinds of positions, black can castle queenside, which I absolutely love, right? Putting more pressure on that pawn on d4, indirectly eyeing up that queen. You never know when things are going to break open. This is just a great game for black, right? Let's say we see a move like c3, which is the computer recommendation, knight h6. Let's look at that f5 square at some point. Okay, let's look at knight f5, right? Let's get this rook to e8. Let's think about some kind of e5 break at some point. Okay, in this position, white has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces developed. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces developed. 6 to 4, and we're playing black. We'll take it. So all that to say, guys, going back to the beginning, right? If you see white go crazy with the move like e5, we got to be careful here. So many Hippo players play a move like e6. Okay, and this is just not the way to do it. You don't want to let white get too much time to just start, you know, however they decide to do it, just start really supporting this pawn on e5 and support it and support it and support it. You got to go after it right away, right? White has made 3 moves. They have no pieces developed. We got to go after this pawn, right? If they take, we capture back with the queen. And if they defend it, we take, and oftentimes this d file opens up. And in that case, you know, we just honestly get a king that's not castled, but can castle, and white gets a king that can't castle at all. We get an advantage in development. White gave us a big old target. We have no pawn weaknesses or targets to speak of. And yeah, that's why I think that this move of e5 is an amateur and yeah, just, you know, an amateur mistake, a mistake that is going to make white's life. Okay, let's get that straight. White's game pretty hard going forward. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you have any questions on e5 and the positions that I showed down below. And on top of that, let me know if you want to see some options against d5 as well. Thanks for watching today's video. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe to this channel. And on top of that, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of the chess content coming your way. I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of December in 2023. And yeah, I mean, if you're interested in becoming a patron, we have a link down below, in which case you will see all of the benefits that you gain by becoming a member. I hope to see you join the family. All that said, I'll see you on the next one.